Welcome. This is the Founders Atlas, a podcast exploring entrepreneurship around the world through the eyes of visionary founders. I'm your host, Mayuri Reddy. Today, we're traveling to Budapest, Hungary, where a growing startup ecosystem is flourishing amongst a historic capital. With its centuries-old architecture and beautiful bathhouses, Budapest is one of Europe's most beloved travel destinations and one of the best places you can go to for vintage shopping. It's also quickly becoming one of the most exciting hubs for innovation in Central and Eastern Europe. There's a reason why people are starting to take notice. But like many places in the world, Hungary still grapples with taboos around women's health, a challenge that today's guest is boldly taking on. In this episode, we speak with Roswitha Verwer, the award-winning founder and CEO of YON E Global, a groundbreaking FemTech startup that's redefining how women monitor their reproductive health. YON E is developing the first at-home device to offer real-time data on vaginal health, bridging critical gaps in care, education, and research. But Roswitha is more than meets the eye. In our conversation, she shares her deeply personal journey from growing up in women's shelters to raising capital in male-dominated boardrooms, and how those experiences fuel her mission to empower women through science and technology. We talk about how culture shapes our understanding of health, what it takes to lead with both purpose and resilience, and why building a company that centers women's needs requires unlearning some of the very systems we've been taught to navigate. YON E Global is currently fundraising for its next major milestone, in vitro lab testing, a crucial step towards regulatory approval. They were recently nominated for the Best HealthTech Startup of 2025 and are preparing for the release of their second scientific publication, reinforcing their commitment to research-driven innovation in both FemTech and medical device development. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Roswitha and share her story. Welcome. This is the Founders Atlas. I'm so excited to have Roswitha Verwer from YON E Global. She is a founder that's based in Budapest, Hungary, but is actually Dutch. And she's going to share a bit about her journey into entrepreneurship and the incredible business that she's starting. Roswitha, it's so wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much, Mayuri, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to this amazing conversation that we will have.
Me too. Maybe just to start off, can you just tell listeners what is YON E Global and what is the problem that you are looking to solve?
So basically, we are developing the first at-home device that women can use to track their overall vaginal health. And what is really important here is that we'll have real-time data. So for the first time, women are empowered to measure their own overall vaginal health, thinking about period tracking, ovulation, fertility, and the level of your pH, because that's often being overlooked. And on top of that, we will align it with lifestyle, because 75% of women worldwide experience vaginal imbalance, and this causes irritation, inflammation, extreme itchiness, but also really affecting reproductive health. And through our research, we realized that 40% out of IVF cases are unsuccessful due to an imbalanced microbiome. So that's why it's really important to have that data, especially with the lack of education in healthcare and resources, to finally have individual women really feel empowered. And on top of that, we will be able for the first time to focus on the measurement of different ethnicities, because all levels of pH are different based on the ethnicities. So yeah, that's actually what we're doing. And next to our medical device that we are developing, we launched Europe's newest femcare web shop from Hungary. So we basically provide organic and sustainable products for women within period care, sexual wellness, pregnancy, postpartum, and well-being, because that is all really intertwined with the overall vaginal health. And we're currently available in Europe and in the UK. So that's in short what YON E is about, yes.
And how did you get to building this business? What inspired you to start it? And how did you turn that inspiration into action?
Yeah, so actually it has a lot to do with my personal life. And unfortunately, a lot of great ideas often are also built from personal experience and trauma. So that's exactly what's happened in my life. So when I was younger, I went to safe houses and women's shelters due to abusement. So me and my mom were like moving around in these women's shelters. So I was really exposed to the problems within women's health, the lack of resources, education. And within that, I experienced myself, but also with the ladies that were in those safe houses with me, the problems with vaginal health based on the stress and external factors within life. So for more than a decade, I know how this has been misdiagnosed, received the wrong medication and information. So actually during COVID, next to my full-time job, I was like, okay, we need to change something.
Yeah.
We need to have actually a device that can really tell us what is actually happening, because our vaginal health can tell us so much about our overall health that I think the majority is not even aware of.
Yeah.
So basically, I transferred my traumas, and I think something so beautiful that can hopefully touch the lives of women everywhere.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, you definitely hit a great point, which is a lot of the best ideas are usually coming from the pain that people go through. Turning pain into power is an incredible act of resilience. And clearly that's something that you've done as well. I'm just so curious because even for me, I actually don't really know what is the current way that somebody would check their pH. Why is this something that we're not already doing?
It's actually it's a really good question, to be honest. It's actually not really been done. And I think that's also the majority of the problem, because often when there is a situation that's occurring, let's say to high pH balance, let's say with infections or really itchiness and yeast and bacteria, then it's actually already too late. And a lot of women walk around with that problem. And first of all, they don't have the time to continuously go to the doctor or go to the drugstore. Just based on our testing, we also realized that many women buy products at the drugstore in the hope that it will work, even though without knowing what the actual issue is. So currently, you can actually test it only with this paper test and like the swabs, but it is not real-time data. So when you do that, for example, and you ship the test out and it's being tested in a laboratory, then within the meantime, of course, your sex or your medication or your lifestyle can already really influence your pH, and then again affecting your vaginal health. So nothing is ever been done before in regarding the pH, and especially there is such a high need for this undiscovered data that we can eventually really measure with our device, and with that we can also really enhance future studies, where of course, as we all know, finally need to be more focused on women. So yeah, I also don't, I mean, it's good for our company, of course, that no one has been focusing on before, but it's also such a lack of information and education and resources. And vaginal health is still such a taboo, right? So that's actually where we're also really tapping into to really focus on the educational factor.
100%. It's so interesting because I know you've probably seen these like TikToks where these guys are asked like, how do tampons work? And they like don't know what the answer is. Like, how many days a month can a woman get pregnant? And there's all these comments of people laughing at them. I don't think a lot of men realize that even women aren't taught about our bodies that well. Like there's things that like the word perimenopausal is a word that I only learned for the first time in the last 3 years, maybe. Learning about like ovulation cycles. These are all things that are pretty new in terms of being a part of the normal, so to speak, culture. And that's just thinking about like maybe more in Western cultures. I spoke to an incredible founder, Nesma, who's also working in FemTech, and she has completely different problems because there's also, again, different taboos in Egypt where she's building. As you're building this product, what are some of the things that, let's say, for example, you're going to an investor, what are some of the things that you have to deal with in trying to tell them about this product, and what are some of the constraints that they bring up when you are trying to present your idea and what it can do for women?
Yeah. I must say that the investment journey is quite a journey, to be honest, especially when I first started, because one thing I needed to learn is that accepting no's. So continuously hearing no, of course, and we all know the issues regarding funds to female-founded companies, as it's only 2.3% from all investments. So to understand that problem on itself, learn to accept the no's and really realize that the more no's you get, the faster you come to a yes. But also from a culture perspective, of course, I mean, we're talking about something that is such a taboo, and many times these VC companies or investors are really male-dominant environments. So in that short amount of time to educate the individual on such a big problem, plus then going to the solution and raising funds, it's often not aligned with each other in such a short amount of time. So these conversations often ended up really interesting and critical, and to also understand that you really need to have clarified and defined for yourself what kind of investor profile fits your company. One thing that we're really focusing on is values first, money after, because it's really important to have someone. It doesn't mean that someone needs to understand fully what we're trying to solve, but at least have the empathy and the interest to really enhance and embody the problems within vaginal health. But the investor journey, I think, doesn't matter which route you are, it's always it's always quite a roller
Yeah.
coaster. Um,
What are some of the common misconceptions that you are tackling?
So I had a previous conversation where we had a lot of email contact. He was really interested in a DAC. We had a conversation. And what I first noticed that he started with, oh, vaginal health is not a problematic environment. It's a bit blown out of proportion. I was like,
Oh,
okay. So it's like, let me educate you. And then I really did notice that he did not took time to even go through the deck. And I know investors are super busy, especially VC companies. So they check like thousands of presentations. So it needs to be really fast interested. But he wanted to have the call. So I thought he was.
yeah.
And then mid conversation, I asked him some counter questions that realized that he did not took the time to at all read the deck. So then he was like, you have such an aggressive energy. And I said, can you please explain that? Because you're asking me questions and I'm asking counter questions because the information is also in the deck. So can you please like enlighten me? And then he was like really intense how some man energies, of course, can come over in these conversations. So I was just really politely explaining this is not the right fit. And I believe in those moments, you also need to realize that it's okay if it's not the right investor and it's not any synergy and alignment, it's totally fine. There will be other potential investors that understand and embody the mission that we are standing for.
Absolutely. And if you're building a cap table, you need to realize that whoever you're going into business with as an investor, like they are somebody you're going to be working with for the next at least 10 years, right? So if you don't like them, if you don't want to work with them, you're not going to be starting your business out on the right foot because you are going to be needing to answer to their questions and their advisory, right? So you can't, they need to be somebody that you respect and somebody you're going to want to be working with.
Yeah.
And you hear horror stories all the time of folks getting other VCs on board and then realizing that they completely are changing the company that they wanted to build. So I totally understand. And it's great that you stood up for yourself and knew that that alignment wasn't there. Because obviously it's always nice to take money from somebody, but if it's not the right money, it's not going to help you the right way.
So that's also a learning process, of course, because I mean, when I first did this, yes, I come from corporate. I worked in skilled startups, but this is the first time I'm actually personally raising money. So a lot of lessons learned that you can also fast implement. And again, the amount of reach out you need to do in the investment field, I think it's also really interesting to see how fast you can learn as a founder and within the startup journey. And also just really listen to the feedback. But what is interesting with the investors as well, everyone has their own feedback and experience and background. So you really need to take out what resonates with you and what you feel is aligned with the implementation of feedback, and don't get lost in all the amount of external input that is being brought in these conversations.
Absolutely. So obviously you worked in corporate and then you switched into building a company in the FemTech space. Was there any unlearning that you needed to do, not just from being, going from an employee to being a founder, but perhaps in the actual working environment and a different pace of work and a company culture? And if so, what was that unlearning process like?
All of the above. It was actually, no, it was literally all of it, because the corporate environment I was in was also, I was living in the US for a while in New York, and I feel like the pace of work is already much different than in comparison to 100%. Europe. Yes. So the company I was working for was really masculine environment, but also like toxic masculine environments. So whenever I realized in these jobs, I often did things out of fear, out of pressure, out of anxiety, like everything that is not aligned with being in balance as a person. So when I started Yoni, these were the tools I had. I mean, I was from university, immediately got this job, went to New York. I was head of operation for a private equity firm. So it was the pace and the amount of work I was doing was insane. But I thought, okay, that's normal to like built the corporate ladder. And then when I made the shift to Yoni, when I finally found my purpose through my resilience in life, I was like, okay, I did that for a year. I was working with the same tools I had. And then I realized this is really not a good example. And building a female founded company, focusing on women's health and lifestyle, I need to also really embody the
Yeah.
advice, what I'm giving. And I feel like as a startup, it's already harder because all the time, resources, everything that you have goes into the startup. And I think that's why it's so important to unlearn these behaviors, especially when I started to grow my team, onboarded my advisory board. It's really important to come from a human perspective, just focusing on the balance within personality, having open conversations, really listening, and also give space to every individual personality as well. And especially when we have women on the team, understand their monthly cycles, their lifestyle, they have children, really embody the space actually to implement that. And it's not only about growth and numbers. That is, of course, important, but I would rather have a team that is dedicated, positive, and feels comfortable. And then together we work on the goals, then really set that above my team and my personality.
Absolutely. And that, I mean, I definitely think that speaks to, that conversation of masculine and feminine energy and having that balance and finding that in not just in your work-life balance, but like your leadership style and how you bring your values into the company is clearly something that's very important to you. I mean, I'm just so curious, we've been hearing lately, beginning part of the year, there's been a lot of dialogue amongst the tech community with a lot of very prominent founders from very prominent tech companies that have been really shifting their dialogue from being, let's care about DEI to we need to have more masculine leadership. I'm just so curious what you think about this. I mean, how is balancing that feminine and masculine energy played a part in the way that you're leading Yoni? What do you think about some of the things that have been said, and how has that, shaped the way that you're thinking about how you need to stand firm in what you're believing as well?
So I think it's from a female leader perspective, I think it's important to understand the difference within masculine and feminine energy, and also figure out in which part you are into the more extreme. Like some individuals are really focusing only on the feminine energy, but when you go into heavy business meetings or like investment conversations or legal cases, you also need to embody kind of like the masculine energy. Especially you will encounter a situation where you're at the table with only men, so you kind of need to be able to tap into those moments, but you also need to be able to tap out of it when it's not needed, because otherwise, as a female perspective, you'll get exhausted because we are more focusing on intuition and emotions and purpose driven. And men are, of course, really focusing on the dedication and fastness and the pace and the numbers and the finances, more radical, actually. So it's important to understand the difference and really kind of like learn and unlearn and feel what is comfortable and what not. And I do think that it's important that we know as a woman to really step into the masculine energy when needed, especially representing an underrepresented environment and underfunded environment. So I think it's important, but it's also hard because, especially as a startup entrepreneur, sometimes even I notice at the end of the day, like I'm so exhausted because I was the whole day in my masculine energy, but at least I'm aware and I can then step out of it and go into my feminine energy. But it's important also for personal relationships with a partner or your family to really tap in and out, because you don't want to be in your masculine energy next to work in your relationship, for example, the whole time.
What are some ways that you figure out when you want to be in your more logical brain and when you want to go into your more intuitive gut? Like when you know which of those two to listen to, or do you have one that you favor over the other?
No, it's really depending on day by day cases. And also I think the conversations you're having, on the meetings you're having, I think it's important to really plan, first of all, based on your cycle. So I would not recommend that during your period to have heavy investment conversations or like heavy business deals, because we already feel horrible. So it's quite harder to do so. But I think what helps for me is to really prepare the meetings up front. So I see, okay, this is, let's say, a legal case, or this is like a really important investment conversation. And depending on the individual you're speaking with, but that's important to have intro calls with everyone, of course, and you know who you're speaking to, so you can kind of like prepare yourself with knowing what is going to your plate on a day-by-day basis.
You know, you hear these heads of really large investment firms that talk about, you know, they want a certain type of founder, or there's certain skills that are, you know, seen as this is the archetype of a founder, right? And I think what you're talking about really is, again, this thing that we're also seeing, which is there is no such thing as what one founder looks like. That's the entire reason I started this podcast, was because I don't think that there is one specific way you need to be in order to be a successful founder. I think there are things that we can learn from each other. But the notion that a lot of people have is that there are the Elon Musk, the Bezos, the Mark Zuckerbergs, that they have, you know, maybe different levels of ambitions, or have different, sorry, cats, so different levels of ambition, and, you know, different levels of success, and they're able to push through some of the things that other types of founders can't do. I think that's BS. I think that obviously
also these are all men, so it's
all
indeed,
men that come from privileged backgrounds. Every single one of them got investment from their families. So just let's put that out there. But I think that it's also lately been thinking a lot about what do we see as success, right? Like, what is that success to be a billionaire? When you're building your company, what does success look like to you? Like, at what point will you feel, or at least perhaps that, you know, the bar is always going to raise it. But for you right now, or maybe for you in the next few years, what does success look like to you? And how will you know that you have achieved some of the goals that you're at least setting right now? I'm sure you're going to have more goals as things go on, but what does success look like for you now?
And how the second one?
Just kidding. Kitty. Oh my God, I love this.
No, I love that question. Because I have a lot of answers in different areas of success. So first of all, I feel successful in my personal life because I'm able to do what I love on a daily basis, and I have the support to do so, and the environment. And coming from the life that I came from, I feel like that is already a huge personal success. And also knowing and understanding that the majority of people don't have that luxury to do something that they love on a daily basis. And that I found my purpose on such a young age, I already found that successful. And I do want to also really embody and be present with these kind of successes instead of only focusing on growth and numbers and milestones, because experiencing this toxic man environment that they're only going after the money, I also noticed that it's kind of like empty, because every time you reach that success and that goal, you want bigger and better and bolder. But at the same time, I really want to enjoy and experience the journey as well on itself. So I feel like to every day at least be present with the thought like, whoa, I'm really doing what I love, even though not always easy. For me, that's already a success on itself. Of course, regarding Yoni, when we are able to commercialize our device, and my biggest goal through this, with the revenue and the profit that we will have from the device, I want to reinvest in safe houses and women's shelters. Amazing. So when we're really talking about like an end success, I feel like that is the main purpose, because I know how it is. I know what needs to be changed. I know what this women needs. And I really want to utilize every part of Yoni eventually in those safe houses, of course, and in comparison to all the data that we're collecting and helping women on an individual basis. But I really find it always an interesting question, because a lot of people see success as automatically something within business, right? But at the same time, it's also really, but I don't want to reach those goals and milestones and being depressed and exhausted and having a burnout. So for me, it's really important to also really embody and appreciate the life that I have through my partner and also the life as well. So success for me is both in personal life and business. And I think that is my focus on success when you ask me that.
Yeah, absolutely. And having, I mean, it sounds like you also have a lot of gratitude for the journey that you're on right now. So yeah, I think that plays a huge role in seeing how far you've been able to build. I will say that's actually been one of the coolest things about doing this so far, is every time I ask a founder what success means to them, it's kind of on that vein, right? It's actually not about this, I want to become a billionaire, I want to start a unicorn. I think those are things that we talk about as a successful founder, like that's the news that we hear, right? We hear all the amazing things that happen. We don't hear about the struggles. We don't hear about the hard parts. And we then idealize like, oh, they were overnight success, right? So definitely does make you think that they reach these successful milestones without any hurdles. And that does paint a different picture about what entrepreneurship is really like. Obviously, starting a company is never easy. And as you said before, what is it? 2.7% of VC funds go to women. An even smaller amount go to women of color. This amongst what the last decade of us talking more and more about women founders, and there seemingly being a greater focus in investing in women, and yet we still haven't seen anything change.
Yeah.
Clearly, there are things that are big struggles. You mentioned a little bit of the things that you've struggled with in terms of, even just speaking to investors that don't understand what your product is and also maybe are kind of being undermining with it as well. But can you maybe speak to how you've dealt with any ups and downs that have happened and how you stay on track or stay motivated even through those hurdles? Like, what are the ways that you find strength, or what are the ways that you find support, whether that's through a community? Is it through, other founders? And what are some ways that, you would advise somebody who is looking to start a company to maybe find that support system as well, or how to create one?
This is again a really good question because I'm still in the middle of it, to be honest, because of the crazy hecticness that continues happening every day. First of all, the support system I'm having is really through my partner that I'm also living with in Hungary. And the reason why I'm also within Hungary, he's also working in healthcare. He owns a pharmaceutical wholesaler. So we're really in the same fields. That's the reason why I also really want to focus on my personal life, because without him, I will be even more stressed. And it's good to have a solid base. But besides that, my advisory board is really strong. I have a really good relationship with them, and they really understand the hurdles that are coming within not only women's health, but also startup in general. What I realized, and I actually heard that on a podcast from a multi-millionaire entrepreneur, he said it's okay to feel a certain way if something goes wrong. Give yourself like an hour, scream, cry, whatever it is. Do it, of course, alone without doing anything regards to other people, but just take that moment for yourself to let it out, regulate your emotions, and then get back on track. Because to not feel the emotions or to not listen to your body or to not regulate these kind of things, it will only build up, and that will cause eventually for a burnout or a breakdown. And that's something that I'm really implementing. What is hard, of course, and I had this conversation yesterday with one of my advisors, I work from home, so the work actually never stops. The office is always open, right? And because every founder of a startup has their drive and his dedication, so to really tell yourself like, no, now it's enough. This can wait until tomorrow. That's something that I really needed to learn, because how do you differentiate priorities? Because everything feels important, right?
Yeah,
growing your startup. And that's, of course, where the personal balance steps into place. So that's the reason why for me it's as important to focus on my mental state, my personal life. It's a bit harder for me because I don't live in the Netherlands where my family and friends are. So I live in Hungary, of course, because of love and because of our strong partnership. But it also sometimes makes it harder. That's the reason why you need to really dedicate your time and effort also on your personal relationship. Because I do notice with a lot of startup entrepreneurs that that's something that often goes wrong. And they put everything, and I did that for the first 2 years, and I realized, okay, that's not healthy for my mental state as well. So I changed that, and it's a good advisory board. It really, really pulls you through and puts you together and helps you in those moments where you feel lost and don't know what to do. I actually received on the 30th of December, we were in the middle of a multi-million-dollar deal, and then somehow we got information that this person was a scam artist, and I was sick. It was December 30th, and you can imagine that you, of course, plan ahead for the next year, for Q1, Q2, etc. So when all of a sudden that news came in the evening, the day before the new year, you need to feel the emotions, let it out, and also just get back and restructure. But
that must have been hard.
Yes, but I do also was really positive about it, because I was like, okay, universe is protecting us, because I would rather not work or sign a term sheet with someone who's a scam artist, because that's more problematic. But at the
100%.
same time, it was a hard pill to swallow. But we did, and I'm really trying to stay positive about these things and just like, I feel like 2024 was quite intense for everyone.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, biggest plot twist of the year, but let's go. It is what it is. But yes, dealing with these kind of hardships and hurdles, I could have done it without my partner or my advisory board, to be honest. So that is really, I feel, one of the most important things, to have a solid support system. This can be through friends and family or communities, or in this case, advisors or relationships. So yeah, without that, I think I will not be so mentally sane in some
Fair
moments.
enough. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that you are in Budapest, right? So you are in a city that's not necessarily home, but also it is actually a pretty strong growing startup scene, particularly in Central Europe. What support systems does Budapest offer to entrepreneurs, and how, if and how, have you been leaning on them?
Yeah, so there are multiple groups actually here, communities focusing on startups and entrepreneurs, but the issue is the language barrier. Often these are for Hungarian people, or at least if you speak the language. After 5 years, I still do not. I really need to. It's quite hard. And what is interesting here in comparison to the Netherlands, of course, because there the ecosystem for startups is of course much more mature. And what is good here, it's really growing up and coming, because since 2001 to 2023, it really increased 41%, almost having 2 billion. So I think that is really amazing and a lot of opportunity. There's a huge tech market here as well. So there are opportunities. For me, what is interesting, because now we actually work with our FemCare side of the business. We are working with hotels, with restaurants, and it's interesting here because first, when I wanted to integrate our feminine products into this high-level establishments, I mean, good luck trying to start about tampons in these places. But within the first year, we had an event with W. We have our products in the most famous restaurants and hotels, because one thing that I really don't understand is that, so if you go to a hotel, you always find shaving kits and like sewing kits and all these kind of things, but never really products for feminine care. So what we're doing, we are taking the feminine care approach and making on a high level way. So now in restaurants and hotels, where you go to the toilet, you have a section with yoni, with candles and glass boxes. So it's really feel like high level dedication. And it's of course all organic and natural without lead, because we all know how bad those mainstream period care products are. But I still remember one scenario. I was, funny enough, me as a founder of Yoni, I did not have tampons with me on my period because somehow I changed
I
my
honestly
bag.
never have tampons with me on my period. It's a huge problem. Every single time I forget, even though it's like I have an app that tells me when it's happening, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably do that. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
So no, it's really funny. So normally I put an extra in my bag just in case for other individuals. So I asked the front desk in this 5-star hotel, and the lady came to me like whispering in my ear, like really like it's something secret we're talking about. I was like, we're talking about tampons. So she was laughing and she was like so nervous and giving it to me like it's something, like we're smuggling something.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, this is really a taboo. It's really a taboo topic. But now we actually are in wellness locations, in like famous hairdressers, restaurants, everywhere you go. As a woman, you just have the extra layer of feeling taken care of. And I think that's really amazing that we're I did that in Hungary. On the other hand, another example, I was invited to talk on stage to represent Yoni within this women community for startups, but it had a male board. I think 2 days before, I shared the presentation. I, of course, prepared. It was like a 20-minute talk, so it's not super short. It's quite a long presentation.
Yeah.
I received an email that it's not allowed to talk about vaginal health and women's health. And the board decided to inform me that. So I needed to change everything. So I, of course, kindly thanked them and said that I'm sorry, but Yoni is about vaginal health. So
What do they want you to talk about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I don't like is I want to address and name it as it is. It is vaginal health. I'm not going to call it intimate wellness, because that can be also related to other kind of things. So I thanked them and declined that. And I was like, okay, we really need to focus more on the educational piece.
Yeah.
And I'm part of the G100, and that is the 100 most influential women in the world. And then they have their own wing per country and dedication. So my focus is humanity, technology, and innovation. And through that, I'm actually going to focus more on the educational aspect. I want to work with the women's shelters here. I will do talks to universities. So I was like, okay, if I cannot make a change like this, let me find a way to do it on another perspective.
Yeah.
And that is really working so far because there is a need, but there's also, because of this huge taboo and cultural differences, I need to find my way, and that's what we currently are doing.
And that's so interesting that I guess there are a little bit of constraints. Kind of in the spirit of finding the opportunity within that, how has Budapest then played a role in your development or management of the growth of Yoni? How are you using these constraints maybe to your advantage, or how is it shaping the way you're now thinking about the company, maybe in a different way than if you had started it in Amsterdam?
Yeah. So I think it gives me an extra motivation because our first launch focus from the medical device, of course, after clinical trials, etc., will be Europe. And knowing that there's such a difference within Europe with cultural restraints and the taboos that are surrounding per country, I was like, okay, now knowing this and now knowing the lack of educational resources in Eastern Europe, why not use that as a motivation to even push it harder here? Because it needs more focus than, for example, Berlin or London or Amsterdam, right? So these places are, of course, really important as well, but that automatically comes with Yoni, with our European focus. So knowing this, I really gonna, I really thought, okay, let's put more focus on Hungary, on itself. I actually just got invited to write a chapter for a book that will be published for to showcasing Hungary in itself, the hurdles and struggles and how female entrepreneurs in technology and STEM are doing, basically giving extra highlights. So that will also really help into the education for countries outside of Hungary. I think there's such a huge potential. Just someone needs to start doing it, and from a female perspective, and I hope that that we are the company that's able to do so.
That's amazing. Education seems like probably a key thing for everybody or anybody working in FemTech. As we were talking about earlier, like this is, again, not something that even many women are taught about. We're not taught about our bodies in this way. Can you explain a little bit about how you're implementing education in the building of Yoni already?
Yes. Yeah, so the educational aspect we do from multiple angles. So first on our website, we have, of course, the blog. We are on all our socials. We used to do femcare chats. Right now, we had our first wellness event at W Hotel. I'm actually planning to do a FemTech event in Budapest. I cannot share too much about it yet, but I think it's a really amazing location to really focus on women in business and women in health and tech from an Eastern European perspective. Next to that, my team, my research manager, Shireen, she's part of Semmelweis. So we're trying to set up an event within one of the highest universities focusing on pharmaceuticals, pharmacy, and also dentistry. It's really worldwide renowned universities. So my goal is to do also conversation there, have an open discussion. So we are trying to angle it from multiple directions. And what I like to do is, because Yoni is like a lifestyle brand plus a medical aspect, right? And the lifestyle brand is really important. So with activations or events, I will always make sure to also do a nice wellness activation. So it's like really a holistic approach, focusing on the educational medical aspects. And besides that, I'm also doing mentoring for young entrepreneurs. And I'm actually going to be invited I will do either remote or in person in a university in Italy. So that I think is also amazing. And that's how we're trying to really implement the educational aspect as much as we can.
You just mentioned as well that you're planning to start in Europe. So, but what is your growth plans? How do you envision scaling your business globally? And, if there's an investor listening right now, what role do you see investors in playing in that journey?
Yes. The reason why we choose for Europe, by the way, because first of all, in the US, we could be a wellness device. But because of the regulatory pathways and regulations in Europe, we need to be going through the medical roadmap. So that's different. But I see it as a positive thing because the US is already so saturated with wellness devices, right? And European is such a stronger position for us. And if we go the harder route, we are actually able to launch globally afterwards. So our plan is to do Europe, then expand to the US or Asia, etc., depending, of course, of the growth. But we're trying to scale And the first part that we're going to do right now is finalize the prototype development to basically do non-human testing. Then we're going to basically get ready to go to clinical trials. And this, of course, where my medical team steps in because I don't have medical experience, but we do have a strong team and work with the right partners. So that's really important. We try to commercialize, let's say, end of 2026 is, I think, the best approach and also a must-have because we're Dutch design, European developed. And because of the regulatory constraints, we decided to do so for the CE mark and FDA approval. And then actually easily we can go to other countries and places.
Amazing. Okay, so you've got a global plan. You've got a global domination plan. I love this. This is great.
Yes.
So again, feminine energy, proving that it can be ambitious and still be going for the big goals.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting to the last couple of questions.
Yes.
So if somebody was a young entrepreneur and they were interested in getting into the FemTech space, or they were passionate about building something that supports women's health in general, what's a piece of advice that you would give to them?
I think I would find a company that is in the field that you're interested in and just start to try to connect with one of the team members. If you're in luck, often founders and entrepreneurs are more than happy to help and share their knowledge. So just a quick LinkedIn message and try to find the right individual. This can then eventually be an advisor or a mentor or any kind of relationship building to just get more education on the market and get some tips. And besides that, one of the advice is definitely get ready to expect the unexpected every day. But yeah, I think that is, and find communities or groups or online webinars or podcasts to just really listen and feed yourself as much education as you can.
Incredible. And my last question, if anyone's listening that wants to support Yoni, whether it's as a customer or investor, what are the best things that they can do to be a part of the growth journey?
Yeah, so from a customer perspective, it's really exciting actually because we're currently building on a full new rebranding. So we have a full new website, full new medical landing page as well. And definitely just order through our web shop, YON E Global, because it's not only helping your own well-being and health, but you're also supporting our Plant a Tree initiative in Tanzania. So for every order, we're planting trees, and it's really nice. You can see also the online map, and you can really see what we're doing and what we already did so far. And of course, just get the word out. From an investor perspective, we're really looking to close our pre-seed rounds, get angel investors on board, hire the right extension of the medical team, of course, really our focus, and then make sure our device is ready to be developed in a prototype and then focus on the actual roadmap to clinical trials. We know it's a long journey and it's hard. So yeah, definitely if investors are interested in supporting women's health and especially underserved vaginal health environments, definitely should reach out to us and we can see what we can do.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I will also I'll put some information in the show notes for folks to not only see your company page, but your personal LinkedIn as well. So folks, if you're interested in learning more about Yoni, FemTech aspiring founders, reach out to Roswitha. She's wonderful, as you can probably tell already. And I'm sure we'll give you so much insight as well into how she's been building everything. Thank you so much for chatting with me. It was so great to speak to you again. I'm really looking forward to, what this year holds for you. I think it's going to be incredible. I've also already been talking to my friends about what you do, just because honestly, it was the first conversation that I had with you that we were talking about pH, and I had no idea that it related to so many other women's health concerns and topics. Particularly, I'm 35. A lot of my friends are in the stage where they're thinking about having children or freezing their eggs. I don't know a single person who has ever brought that up as a topic. So clearly there's a lot of education and a lot of learning that's still yet to be done, but that just proves that there's a massive need for what you're doing. So I'm super excited to see what happens for Yoni and really looking forward to support you as well.
Thank you so much. And I also really want to thank you because I believe what you're doing is so important and so needed as well from everyone who wants to step into the entrepreneurship and a startup life and to listen to these personal conversations from founders. I think it's incredible that you shine a light on them individually and also on the country that they're representing and the journey that they're going through. So thank you as well so much. It's really incredible what you're doing.
Thanks for tuning into the Founders Atlas. I hope you enjoy the ride. To learn more about what Roswitha is building at Yoni Global, check our show notes. And if you could like, subscribe, give us a follow, give us a rating, anything to show your support for the podcast, it means more than you know. Tune in a couple of weeks when we go on our next adventure on the Founders Atlas.